Shannon Martin tonight, a warning from police after suspected poison turns up at a Toronto park.
I just hope this doesn't happen to anybody else.
What dog owners are saying tonight and the latest from police. Plus,
how are they going to develop a framework to address the issues of equity and inclusion?
concern after the Toronto Catholic School Board dissolves its Race Relations Committee. Tonight, members and advocates are calling it a dangerous move. And it's Juno's weekend. We'll take you to Halifax, where the best in Canadian music are being celebrated. We're heading there live in minutes.
This is CBC Saturday News.
Thanks for joining us. Some Toronto dog owners are sounding the alarm after their pets ate suspected poisoning while out for a walk. Police say they are investigating, and they're warning pet owners and parents of small children to stay vigilant. Anam Khan has our top story.
It's been a nightmare 24 hours for these dog owners after their pets stumbled on suspected poison.
Completely disgusted. This was just on regular trails, so not only dogs would have got at this, but animals, or even in a worst case scenario, kids.
Mark Rouleau says he was walking his and his neighbor's dog at Taylor Creek Park Friday evening when the dogs found a jar of peanut butter and began eating it. He immediately took the dogs and the jar to the vet.
They pulled apart the peanut butter, determined looked like it was rat poison, and my understanding was that there were 3 different kinds of rat poison.
The vet says vomiting was induced for both dogs and they were treated for suspected poisoning. They were put on an antidote and will need to be heavily monitored for a month.
Clinically, you cannot tell really shortly after. Usually clinical symptoms of internal bleeding, don't see it until like 3 to 5 days later.
Choi says immediate medical treatment is critical. Still, both dogs are low energy and not their regular selves.
To be honest, I hope we find this guy. Why would you do something like this?
So this is still an ongoing investigation. We haven't determined what the substance is. So we are, this is titled a suspicious incident, and we're putting out an alert that it might possibly be a hazardous material.
Police saying they're on a lookout for the person responsible.
It does concern me because I'm always leery with her because she's always sniffing, and it's hard to get to her.
By sharing their story, Rouleau and Shlom Hope community members remain vigilant and safe. Anam Khan, CBC News, Toronto.
Concern is being raised tonight after the Toronto Catholic School Board has dissolved its Race Relations Committee, a group that's been operating since the early 80s. Lane Harrison has more from members caught by surprise. They're calling it a dangerous move.
The Toronto Catholic District School Board says its Race Relations Committee is no longer needed and is being replaced by newer equity initiatives. On Friday, the Ontario Alliance of Black School Educators met with the board to ask them to re-establish the committee, but so far there's been no firm commitment.
This is people's lives. Anti-Black racism, again, I'm speaking from that perspective as a Black woman, is insidious, it's harmful, it hurts our health, it hurts our children, it hurts our future. And this committee is a tiny measure in checks and balances that we're asking for the board to reconsider reinstating.
Kirk Mark, former head of community relations at the board, says the committee was established in the 80s. He says it addressed things like harassment and discrimination within the school board, dealing with issues still present today.
We're in the 21st century. We still have this scourge called racism. And you have a board that was supposed to be progressive deciding, we don't want this.
In a statement, the school board's chair, Nancy Crawford, says the committee was dissolved because of a new equity action plan established in 2023. She says that plan is focused on Indigenous education, dismantling anti-Black racism, and supporting the 2S LGBTQ+ community. And under that plan, work is underway to diversify staff and ensure representation in curriculum. But for the Alliance of Black Educators, that argument doesn't hold up, because they say the plan only exists because of the committee's work.
And the Equity Action Plan is just the foundation to continue building with the committee to ensuring that lasting change happens.
One education expert says it's not as simple as saying the committee should exist or it shouldn't.
I'm saying that the committee could continue, but it needs to constantly be in relation to the context. What are the students' issues today that must be addressed?
Lane Harrison, CBC News, Toronto.
A state funeral in Montreal today honoring the life and legacy of former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney.
He was motivated by leadership, by getting the big things right.
He became a truly great Prime Minister and a world leader. But to us, he was more than that. He was a truly great father.
The funeral procession weaving through the streets of Montreal, followed by an RCMP honor guard. Inside the service, it was a who's who of Canadian public life, past and present. Canada's 18th Prime Minister died last month in Florida, surrounded by his family. He was 84. Russia is reeling from its deadliest attack in nearly 2 decades. Officials say at least 133 people have been killed. Investigators spent the day going through the destruction. Gunmen stormed a crowded concert hall on Friday. President Vladimir Putin says all 4 of them, along with 7 other individuals, have been arrested. A branch of ISIS has claimed responsibility. The Kremlin says the attackers were trying to escape to Ukraine, but officials there are dismissing any idea of it being involved as absurd. Closer to home, it only took until spring, but the GTA finally got its biggest snowfall of the season, and that led to some dangerous driving conditions, with OPP responding to 200 crashes within just a 24-hour period. Take a look at this one in Bowmanville, where a tractor-trailer jackknifed. The OPP were called to the 401 westbound at Holt Road at 4:30 this morning. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Police say the crash was because of the significant snowfall overnight. Talk about a blast of winter. You know, a lot of people were saying, we aren't done with this yet. We could have a big one, and sure enough, there it was.
Yeah, my line has been spring was just around the corner, but it took a wrong turn. We have nearly doubled what was the previous record of the previous biggest snowfall we had so far this season. 11.6 is what came down yesterday. Biggest snowfall of the season for sure. Drum roll, please, folks. We have about 66.8 centimeters so far this cold season. We still need 2 or 3 big snowfalls to get to what we would normally get to in a typical winter and early spring season. We're not out of the woods yet, but yesterday really had that missing ingredient that we haven't had so far this season, that cold lobe of Arctic air that had temperatures below 0 for long enough to actually get some snow. This wasn't your biggest snowfall in places like Hamilton and Kitchener, but look at Toronto, Brampton, Scarborough, nearly 20 centimeters for those of you there. Certainly enough, as you saw, to have the roads become a standstill, though much of the snow was being whipped around by winds about 40 to 50 kilometers an hour. It has now mostly melted, that late March high sun angle, and of course the treatment on the roads. And if there is any left, it will certainly be melting with the big warm-up I am forecasting for later on in the work week. Shannon?
Okay, thanks, Sophia. We'll see you shortly.
Welcome.
To Halifax now, where Juno weekend is in full force. The main event is taking place tomorrow night, but more than 40 awards are being handed out tonight. And of course, artists are taking the stage. Senior entertainment reporter Eli Glasner is there tonight. He's joining us live. Eli, the awards are already underway. How's it going so far?
It has been an amazing night. It has been an amazing weekend. I mean, when the awards come to a city like Halifax, that footprint is huge. I've been out and about. I was at Juno Fest last night watching some of the performances. I saw Jamila, who just played. She was one of the opening acts for the awards. An amazing kind of dance hall reggae artist. To see her in person, that energy, this is someone who is going somewhere. Then I went to this sweaty kind of underground concert venue called the Sea Tavern, and I saw Begonia, this remarkable artist from Winnipeg. Loved what she was doing. And Talk was playing the headline show of the Juno Block Party. You could watch that for free, and he brought on the Beaches as a special guest. So that was a pretty good evening, but now here we are, and this is the opening night awards, and they just announced the winner of Best Electronic Album, and she is waiting in the wings. Bambi, please join me because there is a wonderful Toronto connection. This is Bambi. Infinity Club is the album. Your first album?
Yes.
And
yeah.
now
It's actually an EP. It's my first EP.
your first EP.
Yeah.
Just getting started. So how does this feel?
I mean, it just feels like, I guess, a big validation to keep going
Yeah.
and keep doing music.
You were talking about like to go from DJ to actually producing, making songs. There's a fear there, right? But you push through.
I mean, I feel like there's not that many women in the electronic music space, not that many Black women, so it's a huge deal, I feel like, just to do something when you have no examples.
Now we're talking to our audience in Toronto right now, and I love what you had to say about the underground scene, because listening to your album, I hear all these different influences, and it sounds like the DNA of that is what's happening in Toronto. So for people sitting at home, and maybe they haven't gotten out to the clubs in a while, tell them what they're missing. Tell them what inspires you.
I mean, I just feel like there's this big resurgence of like late 80s and 90s youth culture that spans from Toronto to the UK to across Europe to the Caribbean. I feel like Toronto is one of the most diverse cities in the whole world, and you're really feeling that when you're in the most sort of like, when you're in the underground, when you're at these clubs, when you're at these raves. I feel like that's when Toronto feels most like Toronto.
And does that express itself in the music that you're seeing? You'll hear dance hall, you're gonna hear jungle.
Totally.
It's all in the mix.
It's everything my friends are playing. It's everything my friends are talking about. It's everything that my friends kind of embody that kind of became my EP.
Amazing. Listening to your EP, now I'm just a little bit older than you. Is jungle back or did it never leave?
Okay, I would say jungle left for a second.
It did, all right.
But I feel like it came back like in the middle of the pandemic when I think people were most frustrated, when I feel like young people were
We were just like dancing in our bedrooms.
Yeah, I feel like when people were at their peak frustration and feelings, just I feel like so much disillusion politically, creatively, I feel like jungle in Toronto at least definitely made a return.
Now where do you go from here? I mean, Juno winning artist, more albums on the way. You're gonna take a break to savor?
No, I'm definitely already working on my second EP, so I'm like in deep hibernation right now, already working.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That is Bambi, Toronto's very own, working on her next album. Stay tuned, and back to you, Shannon.
Hey, Eli, thanks for that. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow night at the big night. For the first time in almost 700 years, the city of Kingston will experience a total solar eclipse, and that's got the city very busy, as you can imagine, with a number of preparations. Joining me now is the mayor, Brian Patterson. Thanks for being here.
Thanks very much.
So let's start with the crowds that are expected. I know there's probably a number of factors like weather on the day of, but what are you thinking in terms of how many people might show up?
Well, it's definitely a pretty wide range. We've looked at some of the cities that were in the U.S. during the last total solar eclipse back in 2017, and just using their experiences as a little bit of a guide for us. We are expecting anywhere from 40, 50, 60,000 people all the way up to 500,000. It's really hard to know. I think what's fair to say is we're expecting a large crowd, but we're planning for that. And certainly looking forward to what I think will be a once-in-a-lifetime event for not only those of us here in Kingston, but for many others that are going to be coming in to watch the eclipse.
Absolutely. So many people are excited for this. And I understand Kingston is among the top 5 sites in Canada to see the solar eclipse. And that's got people traveling from around the world to see it. So if people are watching and they haven't booked, say, a hotel by now, would you say, is it too late? Is everything full?
Certainly, it's not too late. Certainly, our hotel occupancy is much higher than it ordinarily would be for a Monday in April. But certainly, there are still some hotel options certainly available in the city and in the region. I think that is certainly one of the things that we are encouraging is that we think because of the number of people that might be coming, trying to come right in just before the eclipse or right out is going to be a challenge, we think, with traffic. So we certainly, would encourage people, come, make an extended weekend here in Kingston, come and enjoy the city. Not only is there lots of other things to do before and after the eclipse, but it will certainly, I think, help to manage the traffic flow, both in the city and then obviously to and from Kingston as well.
Yeah, I imagine this is just a massive coordination effort between, your office, city services, police. What kind of measures are you putting in place for the day of?
Well, I mean, certainly it's, all hands on deck, certainly with all of our emergency services personnel. And, we're going to be, obviously spread out around the city, helping with traffic and with crowd control. One of the things that we're trying to do is set up a number of different designated viewing areas throughout the city. So that not everybody is congregating in one spot. That obviously would create more traffic and more crowds. And so we've got lots of information on our tourism website. Visit kingston.ca. You can check out lots of spots to go. Again, encouraging people to come early and spend time in the city. But ultimately, we're working with our emergency services personnel, making sure, for example, that we've got designated routes to and from the hospital. We're certainly, conscious if someone was to have a medical emergency, making sure that there are routes that people can take. But ultimately, outside of an emergency, really stressing for people to be patient and just to understand that obviously the traffic and crowds are going to be much, much higher than.
Yes, pack patience, because as you mentioned, this is going to be an extraordinary thing to take in. And I would say, for people watching, your best piece of advice, if they're thinking, Kingston's the place I want to be, what would you want them to know?
Yeah, I mean, I think best piece of advice is definitely come and experience here with us, but leave early and prepare to leave a little later as well. I think that we are expecting that the traffic and crowds will obviously be highest both right before the eclipse and right after. So I think it'll be a more enjoyable experience if you can come earlier and spend time, in our downtown. You can experience some of our tourist sites, which are frankly wouldn't ordinarily open until maybe closer into May, but really everything is opening full tilt. So all of our tourism partners are ready to go and looking forward to a great day, but hopefully a couple of great days on either side.
Yeah, a chance to see something super rare and also explore a part of the province maybe that people haven't seen before. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks very much.
That's Brian Patterson. He's the mayor of Kingston. A sprawling new community center is now officially open in North York. The Edenona-Washtenaw Community Rec Center is the first ever in Toronto to be named in collaboration with the Huron-Wendat Nation.
There is so much we must learn and we must honor. Thank you for giving us this incredible name, and we will dedicate ourselves to honor that history, to make this a good, beautiful place.
As you saw there, Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow giving remarks alongside Indigenous leaders and city officials. The community center is located in the Bayview Village neighborhood. It features athletic facilities, a library, commercial kitchen, and a banquet hall. At nearly 220,000 square feet, it is now the largest community center in North York.
No, this is really heavy, but I can carry it. It's really strong, and I'm strong enough to carry it.
Nice work, buddy. Families out clearing the snow this morning in the GTA. Oh, with some interesting shoveling techniques there. According to Environment Canada, here in Toronto, we got 11.6 centimeters of snow overnight, with Scarborough and North York receiving the most in the GTA with 18 centimeters. Just enough fresh powder for some fun on the slopes today.
I thought it was going to be spring, and then suddenly it's snowy, so I thought I would sled.
A good idea. It hasn't been the typical winter we're used to. It's been difficult to enjoy any kind of winter activity like sledding due to the lack of snow and warm temperatures. If you remember, this is what it looked like a month ago when it was officially winter. People out there wearing shorts in Toronto as we broke an 86-year record with 11 degrees back on February 9th. What a turn, what a winter. I feel like it's been a bit of a ride the whole way through.
Yeah, the shorts and t-shirt weather, it feels like it was a long time away. Mother Nature has a lovely sense of humor, and here's a controversial statement. I kind of love me a late season or an early spring snowfall. You get that beautiful sun. The tulips aren't so happy, though, and neither were some of you that had to shovel in Scarborough. With that extra oomph you got off Lake Ontario, you had the highest snowfall totals in the region. This was that missing piece we talked about earlier, that extra lobe of cold Arctic air. Port Severn reached minus 38.8, and that seems absolutely frigid, but normally we hit well into the minus 40. So it still isn't as cold as it normally gets all the way up at James Bay, but we did have the cold Arctic air that helped allow the temperatures below zero to give you all that fun snow to go down the slopes, and big warm up ahead though. Any of that snowpack will be a far distant memory by the time we hit Tuesday. Now Sunday, seasonal across the board in much of the province, but if we look ahead to Monday, watch what happens. Double digits in southwestern Ontario, still at the freezing mark with snow in parts of northwestern Ontario. That trend will continue throughout the work week. Some of you on the shores of Superior will see upwards of 30 centimeters of snowfall for this first half of this upcoming work week. Meanwhile, the rest of us in the south will be in the warm sector of this Colorado low. It'll bring a southerly flow, a few periods of some showers, and yes, the return to double-digit warmth, especially if you head farther to the southwest. Will it last, though? That is the question. I wouldn't count on winter being totally out of the woods yet, Shannon.
You just never know. We could get another big storm in May. It's happened.
Gotta keep it interesting.
Okay, thanks, Sophia. Cities, towns, and homes around the world are lowering the lights tonight, marking this year's Earth Hour. Sydney's famed Opera House and Harbour Bridge were among the first landmarks to go dark. The Earth Hour then began circling the globe. The first was in 2007, the idea to show support and raise awareness for the fight against climate change. It's now observed in more than 190 countries. That's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow night at 11.